2 newborn girls are lying in a Manchester hospital, but they're connected at the spine. They share the same blood supply, and doctors know something unbearable. If nothing is done, both babies will die. If they perform surgery, one of them will die immediately. And standing right alongside those doctors are 2 parents who are living through a kind of anguish no parent should ever have to face. This is the point at which law and medicine collide, because saving a life in this situation will require causing a death. More than a century earlier, British courts faced a different kind of horror in Dudley and Stevens, shipwrecked sailors who killed a cabin boy to survive. The judges were absolute in their decision. No matter how desperate the situation, how hungry the sailors were, necessity or killing another is not a defence to killing the innocent. It's better to die than to decide who deserves to live. This rule has stood for over 100 years, until recently reality tested it in a way the Victorian judges could never have imagined, because this time the people facing death weren't sailors, they were newborn children. And the choice wasn't survival after disaster, it was whether the law itself could authorise an act that could save one life by ending another. When the criminal law steps in before a crime exists and then redefines what counts as killing, we're entitled to ask this question: is this justice or a miscarriage of justice? Or is the law crossing a line here that it can never uncross? So the courts face the question that Dudley and Stevens tried to close forever. When every option is wrong, can necessity or the killing of another become lawful? This is the story of A, the Conjoined Twins case. Jodie and Mary were born in Manchester in the year 2000, and they entered the world not side by side, but fused. Joined at the pelvis and lower spine, they shared a major artery. Doctors quickly understood the truth here. Jodie was strong, she had a working heart, she had functioning lungs, and a body capable of life. But Mary did not. Her heart could not sustain her. Her lungs could not even oxygenate her own blood. She only lived because Jodie's circulation carried her. Doctors use the word parasite, not as an insult, but as a biological description. Mary's survival depended entirely on Jodie's body, and every beat that was keeping Mary alive was slowly exhausting Jodie. Without separation, both children would die within months. But with separation, Jodie could live, but Mary could not. Between these 2 facts stood medicine's oldest command: to save life. But here, saving one meant ending another. And standing between those facts were the parents, who were devout Catholics. To them, both daughters were equal before God. Agreeing to surgery felt like signing Mary's death warrant. In their faith, you cannot do evil so that good may come. So they chose the only path that was open to them, that didn't involve active harm. Let nature take its course, even if nature were to take both girls. Now, this wasn't coldness, it was devotion to their beliefs. They believed they were protecting both children from being turned into instruments of the other's death. But the doctors saw a different obligation, because the medical team knew the clock was ticking. Without surgery, both twins would die. With surgery, Jodie would live. For the doctors, that knowledge opposes their training to save lives and not to stand by to watch a preventable death unfold. But here, intervention meant crossing a legal line, because causing death is murder, even when the motive is to rescue. So the doctors stood frozen between these 2 challenging intersections: the parents' right to decide and the doctor's duty to save lives. Doctors knew that doing nothing was simply not an option. So the hospital did something extraordinary. It asked the courts to decide. And suddenly, in that moment, the unfolding medical crisis became law's responsibility. 3 judges were asked to do the unthinkable. not to interpret statute, not to apply precedent, but to decide whether the state itself could authorise an act that would end a child's life in order to save another. Courts are designed to resolve disputes, not human tragedies like this, so each of the judges turned inward, weighing their conscience as they chose which legal principle to apply, and each of them found principles in different parts of the law. Justice Ward began with a hard truth. Inaction is still action. If the court refused permission, it would not stay impartial. Without intervention, both children would die. Mary had no functioning heart, no functioning lungs. She only survived because Jodie's body carried her, and the burden was physically killing Jodie. Justice Ward said the court had a duty to protect Jodie's right to life. For him, the question wasn't who deserves to live, but it came down to the one choice that preserved life. So Justice Ward reframed the situation in this way, not as killing Mary, but as stopping Mary's dependence from killing Jodie. Here the law was recognising necessity, not as a justification for killing, but as a defence, a tragic intervention in a world where harm would not be avoided. So for Justice Ward, the court wasn't choosing a victim, it was choosing responsibility. And that reasoning became the first bridge towards the decision that followed. Now, Justice Brooks went further and he engaged with necessity differently, and he touched more deeply on the same doctrine that failed in Dudley and Stevens, where starving sailors killed a cabin boy to survive. The court in that case had ruled that desperation or hunger never excuses murder. So why was the Conjoined Twins case different here? Well, Justice Brooks stated a very simple truth. Sometimes the law tolerates a technical wrong to stop a greater disaster. You can break into a house, for example, and pull someone from a fire, and in the process you damage the property, but you do save a life. This means that the law can bend because catastrophe demands it. The doctors were trapped in exactly this kind of emergency. If they did nothing, 2 children would die. If they acted, they would cause the death of one of them while trying to save the other. They were paralysed between their medical conscience on the one hand and the criminal law on the other. The doctors had acted from a sense of duty, so Justice Brooks focused on intention. What matters is why something is happening. The doctors weren't aiming at Mary's death, they were aiming at Jodie's life. Mary's death was foreseeable, but it wasn't desirable. It was the price of rescue, not the purpose of allowing her to die. So for Justice Brooks, this wasn't an ordinary case of necessity. It was a moral emergency where rigid rules had to flex so the law didn't become an accomplice to 2 deaths, where one life could still be saved. And once necessity entered the room in this way, the case stopped being about the permission to kill and became about the permission to save. Now, Justice Walker approached the case from a place that the law rarely visits, self-defence. Mary, in his eyes, wasn't an aggressor. She had no intent, no malice, no choice, but her existence bound to Jodie's body posed a fatal threat to Jodie's life. Every hour Mary lived, Jodie's heart had to work harder. Her lungs strained longer. Her strength was strained to keep another child alive. And the law already recognised something unsettling. You may defend yourself even against an innocent threat. If someone falls towards you from a building, you can push them away to avoid being crushed, even though they meant no harm. Self-defence isn't about guilt, it's about survival. Jodie was not a half person, she was a separate child in her own right. She had her own moral claim to life, yet her future could be silently erased by a dependency she never consented to. Justice Walker argued that surgery was morally equivalent to removing an unintentional danger to Jodie's existence. The purpose was not to end Mary's life, It was to stop Jodie's life from being ended. Two innocent lives had collided inside the one body, and when that happens, the law cannot protect both. So it must protect one so the other can survive. Not because one child matters more, but because only one could be saved. From Justice Walker's perspective, the court wasn't choosing death, it was choosing a defence. And once that idea is accepted, everything that follows becomes unavoidable. The three judges may have disagreed on legal theory, but they did agree on the outcome. All three began from the same legal line. It is unlawful to intentionally kill an innocent person. That is, no court can authorise the killing of someone. But this case wasn't about choosing death, it was about whether the law could allow an act whose purpose was to save a life, even though death would follow. Jodie had a right to live, a right to bodily integrity, and a right to exist as her own person. And yet by accident of biology, neither of the twins possessed what every other human being normally has, a separate body which is entirely independent of another. The twins were born without autonomy, and without separation, Jodie's body would be consumed sustaining her sister Mary, until both heartbeats stopped. So the court reframed the act itself. The goal of the operation was never to kill Mary. It was to separate two bodies that should never have been fused in the first place. And once separated, Jodie could live, and Mary, tragically, could not. Her death was not the intention. It was an unavoidable consequence to restoring bodily integrity to both children. In a strange and painful sense, separation didn't take Mary's body. It revealed that she never had independence from Jodie's body. She would die not because the doctors chose her death, but because her own organs could not sustain existence. For Mary, continued attachment offered no future, only prolonged dependence, possible suffering, and the certainty of dragging her sister with her. So the judges asked a different question: what is in the best interest of each child? For Jodie, it was survival, autonomy, and a future. For Mary, it was release from a body that could never function, and from a dependence that would ultimately destroy both of them. And so the court authorised the operation, not because death was acceptable, but because life, intention, and inevitability had collided in a way the law could no longer ignore. Only the least tragic path forward was legally acceptable. While the operation went ahead, Mary died moments after separation, and Jodie, she lived, she grew up, she went to school, she made friends, and she carried forward a life that only existed because of the impossible decision made by three judges. This case isn't just legal history, it's a human story written into someone's everyday life. RE still echoes through modern medicine and law because medicine keeps creating situations that the law can never anticipate. This case has become a blueprint for the courts, which helps them to address these impossible choices when doctors can't act with legal clarity. Today we have advanced neonatal surgery. We have life support technology and end-of-life interventions. And with them come choices where there is no clear answer. Dudley and Stevens gave us a hard rule. Necessity can never justify killing. RE didn't overturn that, but it cracked the door open and it reshaped the doctrine or law of necessity. It didn't say killing is acceptable, it said intention, inevitability, and proportionality all matter. Courts still rely on this reasoning in cases of emergency surgery or life support withdrawal or triage decisions, even parental refusal of treatment. This case has also changed how we talk about ethically challenging situations in medicine, and going forward will help us clarify parental rights. Parents can act from a place of love, and still be overruled by the courts. If Dudley and Stevens warns us about moral boundaries, Re reminds us that sometimes the law doesn't get to avoid human tragedy, it has to navigate it. This case forces a question none of us like answering. When every option is wrong, what does justice actually look like? Is it about choosing the outcome that saves the most lives? Or is it about the intention behind the act, the moral centre of the decision? Or is it about choosing the path that leaves the least damage behind? Re doesn't offer any comfort here, because sometimes the law isn't about deciding between good and evil, it's about finding a path forward. If you were the judge, what would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you want more stories like this, where law collides with humanity, click the like, subscribe and share buttons now. This is Cherryl from the Wrongful Conviction Archive, signing off. For now, take care and I'll see you in the next video.